Hi everybody, welcome back. Miss Magdalene here again, and today, as promised, I'm going to cover the next three professional skills that will be essential in strategic business leader. So the next three professional skills that I'm going to talk about will be analysis, evaluation, and skepticism. And remember the other two skills, commercial acumen and communication, was covered in part one. Now, what is the requirement for the analysis skill? Now, according to SBL, analysis means to thoroughly investigate. Now, this is very important, to thoroughly investigate and to research information from a variety of sources. So this is the skill that students are required to have, and also to logically process the information that you have collected. Because at the end of the day, in the exams, you may be asked to recommend appropriate action. Now, for analysis, you must remember these three skills: to investigate, to inquire, to consider. Or in other words, IEC. Okay, to investigate, to inquire, to consider. So let's ask ourselves, what do you mean to investigate? In other words, you must do some form of investigation to obtain certain relevant information from a variety of sources. So your sources can come from the exhibits in the case study given to you, or your sources can even come from your knowledge. Now, to investigate something, you may be asked to use some form of analytical techniques. And that's why in SBL, you will still be taught some analytical techniques like ratios, linear regression, or it could be using some form of technical knowledge that you also have acquired during your journey in studying the syllabus of SBL. And most importantly, you must be able to draw out the information from the case study to investigate the significance, the implications, the effect on the company, and even things like why it happened. Now, the next skill under analysis will be to inquire. Remember the mnemonic of IEC. So I is to investigate, E is to inquire. Inquire means to perhaps find out further, maybe by asking relevant individuals, or to obtain sources of data so that there is sufficient evidence to corroborate or to support or even to dispute certain information to reach a conclusion. And the third skill under analysis would be I, investigate, E, inquire, and C is to consider. So what is the meaning of consideration? Consider. That means you're supposed to consider the information that you have investigated, information that you have inquired. This is where you may have to recommend appropriate actions to the company, and you have to also consider the evidence that you have collected. Is it suitable for a proposed action? So remember, under analysis skill, remember the mnemonic of IEC. Investigate, inquire, and consider. So let me give you an example. So imagine you are doing an SBL integrated case study, and in the case study you have a question where you are again a business analyst at this audit firm called Kensei in Chan, and one of your clients wants to acquire a potential target company and wants your advice. Now, this is very important. That's what strategic business leader wants you to do, to acquire certain skills so that you can advise your client on how the acquisition should be financed. So it's about the financing issues of acquiring this company. Now, the client has an option to issue either bonds with a yield of 10% or issue new share capital to another potential investor at $6 per share. So my question to you now is as follows. Okay, you have to write a report. Now remember, report is just a format. It is not a skill. As I mentioned in the earlier video, I'm not going to cover the format in this, the last two videos. The format will be covered in another session. So you have to write a report to the client which evaluates whether the acquisition should be financed by bonds or issue new share capital, 12 marks. And the professional skills is to demonstrate analytical skills in assessing the two methods of financing. So again, if you're a student, if you just throw in information about what are bonds, what is equity, what is debt, you are not going to get any marks because you still need to apply the analytical skills. So, as a marking guide, this is what ACCA has given. To get a 2 marks per point, you must demonstrate your IEC. That means you must investigate relevant information about advantages and disadvantages of debt and equity. That's where you investigate whether debt is better for this company or equity is better for the company. And perhaps you may need to inquire, like for example, if the case study contains some financial data, you may need to investigate and perhaps inquire by using some analytical techniques, like maybe calculation of ratios pre and post acquisition. Perhaps if they give you some information about the gearing ratio of the company, you may have to calculate the gearing ratio pre-acquisition and post-acquisition, assuming if they decided to use the issue of bonds. And also to consider the information where you may have to recommend the method of financing which is more appropriate for the client. Okay, I hope you clearly understand the requirement of the professional skill of analysis. Always remember, analysis is IEC. Okay, now the next professional skill would be evaluation. Now, evaluation means to carefully assess situations, proposals, arguments. You must use some professional and ethical judgment to predict future outcomes and consequences, and also to think about possible causes of actions that can be examined. So under the evaluation skill, the first skill is required is to assess. And then you have to estimate and appraise. So AAE, assess, estimate, and appraise. So what is the meaning of the word assess? Now assess means to use your professional judgment when considering a decision, problem, or issue. And again, this is more of applying your understanding about certain thing and using your judgment to think whether this particular decision will impact key stakeholders. Is there pros and cons related to that decision? And can you assess potential urgency to a decision? Is there a need for the company to do it now? Should they postpone it, for example? Okay, I hope you understand this particular risk skill. And estimate, which is the E, means to use reasonable assumptions. Make reasonable forecasts or trends. And perhaps to show how different decisions may impact the organization. So when you are advising your client about something, for example, you may bring in some reasonable assumptions, whether they should do it now or whether they should do it later, and what is the impact on the organization. And lastly, to appraise. Now remember, appraise means you are supposed to provide facts or opinions and findings objectively. And your appraisal must be a balanced one, where you may have to talk about the cost benefits, the advantages and disadvantages when making such recommendations. Okay, so remember, appraising means to provide facts, opinions, and findings objectively. Okay, and to give a balanced appraisal. So, another example I can give you, again, if you are doing a SBL integrated case study, maybe in the question they say you are the audit partner of this audit firm again, and you're responsible for the audit of this company called Sapu Sapi Company. And the CEO of Sapu Sapi currently is Mr. Smart, and he is thinking of appointing a new CEO to manage the day-to-day operations of the company, but would like to stay back as chairman of the company. So the question is asking, can you write a letter to Mr. Smart? So again, this is your format. Remember, Ms. Mac tells you format is not covered in this video, which discusses the advantages and disadvantages of Mr. Smart staying on as chairman after the new CEO is appointed, 8 months. And the professional skills here is to demonstrate evaluation skills for 2 months. So again, your marking guide, how would your marking guide look like? Again, remember your AAE. So again, you may have to use professional judgment to find out whether it is beneficial for the company or is it a disadvantage to the company to appoint a new CEO, but at the same time, Mr. Smart retains as chairman of the company. So again, like for example, it may be beneficial for the company to appoint a new CEO. However, can it impact the confidence of the shareholders? Can it impact the strategic decisions made by the company because of the change in the governance aspect? And perhaps new CEO may lack knowledge. But at the same time, Mr. Smart has not left the company. He's still the chairman. But because he's used to be the CEO of the company, as a chairman, he may not be so independent to oversee the whole board process. So this is part of the professional skills under evaluation. And again, you may have to estimate using reasonable assumptions about the new CEO because they have not appointed one yet. So unless the company appoints someone with good interpersonal skills, with good industry experience, perhaps it can be an advantage to Sapu Sapi. Because any new CEO being appointed may not be able to work with the existing NEDS, so board dynamics might be affected. And finally, you may have to appraise in the context of the case study and what is happening to the case study. Should the new appointment to the CEO be made, and should Mr. Smart stay back as the chairman? So that is more on evaluation. Okay, and the last skill is skepticism. So remember, in this video, we are covering 3 skills: analysis, evaluation, skepticism. Now, skepticism is a little bit easier than analysis and evaluation because skepticism means to probe, to challenge, to question information and views presented. It could be based on information that you know. It could be based on ethical and professional values, where you may have to probe on the quality and source of information, purpose of information. So remember your PQC, probe, question, and challenge. So to probe means to find out more beyond what is informed or apparent. Find out more reasons or issues or problems besides what is given to you. So like for example, in the case study of SBL, they may give you some information about certain things. Question you should ask yourself is, are you satisfied with the information given to you? If not, can you probe further? Does the information given to you contradict with another source? So sometimes in an integrated case study in SBL, they may give you like 7 exhibits or 7 types of information. It could be board minutes. It could be an extract from an annual report. It could be information about a competitor. So you may need to probe a little bit further and try to see whether there is any contradiction, maybe between the board minutes and the annual report and stuff like that. Okay, I hope you understand the idea of probing. Probing means to question, to find out further. And of course, the next skill is to question. Question means you are questioning the facts or opinions or any other assertions made. So let's say, for example, if the CEO gave information to you and said that this particular decision is going to benefit the company in the long term, you may have to question, you may have to scrutinize the assumptions, question the motive and the rationale behind this particular decision. And if there is any additional information to support what the CEO say, then you should draw it up. And lastly is to challenge. Challenge means to highlight problems of information presented. And sometimes information presented is too summarized, too limited. So you may indicate that you may need more sources of information before a decision can be made. Or you could use evidence to support the challenge and identify potential alternative information or decisions. Because sometimes when you advise someone, you may need alternative information or alternative recommendations that can be put forward for them to probe, for them to think further. So again, let me give you another example. If you're a business analyst in the consultancy division of Kensei & Chan again, and again, Kensei & Chan is the auditors of Sapi company, and the board of Sapi is thinking of acquiring another company called Puppy Company, and you have been given some background information. So as long as you have been given some information, remember, they can ask you to apply skepticism skills, where you may need to probe further the information. So again, the question is to write a report to the board to evaluate the potential acquisition, 20 marks, and also to recommend whether the acquisition should be carried out. And then the skills require skepticism skills in questioning the reasons for the potential acquisition. So remember your PQC under your marking guide, probe, why Sapi is considering this acquisition. Is this a good potential target? So this is where you can use frameworks, where SBL will cover frameworks like, is it suitable, is it acceptable, is it feasible? But again, as a student, if you forgot to use the framework, you will not lose technical marks, even if the framework is not used, as long as you can demonstrate that you have probed the reasons or the rationale behind this acquisition. Now, the second one is to question. Make sure you question whether the acquisition is suitable for Sapi. How? Why? Is it acceptable? How is it acceptable? If not, why? Is it feasible? Okay, from financial aspects, non-financial perspective. And then you may need to challenge information provided to you in Exhibit 7, for example, and use evidence to challenge or identify alternative information which could be missing from Exhibit 7. Okay, and then finally you may need to make recommendations in the conclusion of the report. Acquire or not to acquire. So it is a very interesting skill to probe, to question, to challenge. Okay, so I hope you understand the skills that is required by students in SBL. Although at the moment it looks challenging, but remember, these 5 skills will take 20 marks of your exams. So remember, what are the 5 skills? In the first part, Ms. Mac talked about communication, commercial acumen. In this second video, I talked about analysis, evaluation, and skepticism. So remember, if you do not demonstrate any of these skills, your marks for SBL will be very, very low. I hope these videos have been useful for you, and please look forward to future videos from your SBL lecturers, Miss Magdalene, myself, and also Mr. Lawrence. See you. Thank you very much for your time.